Thank you all for coming to the first tidbit of the spring semester. It might not feel like spring out, but it's the first tidbit of the spring semester. And I'm super excited about it because I think this is a really awesome topic. And I want to introduce Dr. Ed Carmien, who is going to present our tidbit today about his experience on the Appalachian Trail. I don't want to talk anymore. So Ed, thank you so much for being here and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Ed Carmien, English department. I'm sure I know many or most of you on the call here. So the Appalachian Trail, you might ask, what the heck is the Appalachian Trail? 2,200 miles, footpath, hikers only, runs from Georgia to Maine through 14 states. It's a tremendous American resource. The idea came to a guy named Ben McKay in 1921. He first presented it to a group of friends at the Hudson Farm right here in New Jersey. His spouse had just passed, and he was quite sad. He was busted up about it, and so his friends got together with him there at the Hudson Farm, and they talked through the night. And he came up with this idea for a nature resource that would be accessed by people from all along the East Coast via train. So from Boston to Atlanta, the trail is accessible by train, and hiking the whole thing or even parts of it wasn't really the idea at the start. One of the guys at this meeting ran an Architectural Digest magazine, and that's where the idea for the Appalachian Trail was first published. So Ben McKay was a nice guy. He was a big dreamer. And so this kind of noodled along for years until a real doer came along, a guy named Avery. And this Avery guy, he liked the idea. He really got fired up about it. And within a relatively short number of years after Avery got involved, the trail was complete in 1937. This involved quite a bit of friction between Avery and McKay, and the two parted ways, and Avery continued with the official trail organization, and Ben McKay became kind of an honored figure, invited to give speeches and things, about the whole process, about the trail. Of course, World War II happened, and then it took a while for the trail to kind of come back into focus. There's a guy who hiked the trail after World War II. The Appalachian Trail people were all together in a meeting, and they were talking about the impossibility of anyone hiking the whole thing. And Earl Schaefer shows up and says, "I just hiked the whole thing. Who do I talk to?" And they're like, "You didn't hike the whole thing." And he had photos and a log, and it turned out that he had. He also helped tell them, this trail that you finished in 37, it's been almost 10 years, and that the trail is, not as good as it used to be. So that's kind of where the trail started, was this notion, this utopian notion of people going to the woods and growing their own food. And you might detect here that Ben McKay is a bit of a socialist. And then over the years became more of like a local hikers would hike it. And then this idea of through hiking kind of grew with time. Some real famous people in the context of the hiking system have hiked it. There's Grandma Gatewood hiked the thing, just a Ohio grandmother who decided she didn't want to hang around the farm anymore. And so she packed her stuff up and carried her stuff sometimes in a shower curtain and walked the trail in tennis shoes. And of course, just recently, I can't remember the woman's name, but someone speed hiked the whole thing in 40-something days, which is a pretty amazing time. Some 3 million odd people use the trail every year. A couple thousand, the numbers change, attempt something called a through hike. That's where you start at one end and you hike the whole thing, or you start in the middle and hike half, and then you drive back to the point you started and hike the other way. Or some people hike north to south. Most people hike south to north. And then other people like me section hike. The trail is always there. It doesn't go away year to year. So starting in 2013, in the company of my colleague, John Nadig, who's here with us today, I hiked my first miles on the Appalachian Trail. And that there on your screen is the first white blaze I hiked. I'm wearing the same blue fleece. I don't have that backpack anymore, but that's my start in 2013. So had less white in my hair then. And the two of us had a couple days out on the trail, and that was just the beginning of my journey so far. Now, me personally, I've hiked about 1,000 miles of the trail, which is less than half. It's 2,200 miles long, so that's a lot of steps. People say it's 5 million steps to hike the trail. You go up some number of Mount Everests, 16, 18 something Everests is the amount of elevation you gain as you hike it. Through hikers typically take 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Only the super speedy running people do it in less than that. And it costs a couple thousand a month these days to hike because it's expensive. You know, you got to carry your food. You got to get a hotel once in a while to clean up, you know. So that is about the main part about the trail that I have to share with you. And I've been only talking for about 6 minutes, but I find that a lot of people just have questions. So when I'm hiking myself, I sleep in a hammock. This is a guy on the trail I met. I helped him with his hammock, so he's quite happy. Sometimes on the trail, you stay at a place called a hostel. You may be familiar with the term from people traveling in Europe. Basically, it's the same idea, but instead of hitchhikers or people taking trains around Europe, hostels along the Appalachian Trail are typically used by hikers who need a cheap place to get a shower, wash their laundry, resupply. And this is a place that I stayed a while ago. This is a guy in Georgia. This is Neil Gap. That's really your first northbound arrival point near Blood Mountain. There I am in a shelter, setting up to eat. It's got a little pot there with a little stove underneath it, keeping up my food. This is a rare shelter that's actually fully enclosed. The night I stayed there, a whole raft of kids with a couple of camp counselors showed up, and about 20 people slept in that cabin. So I was about 20 yards away, hanging between a couple trees. So trail is an important part of a lot of communities. They recognize it with street names and stuff like that. This is up in, I think, Massachusetts somewhere. Of course, when you're out on the trail, you get to see a lot of stuff, a lot of pictures, sunsets, sunrises, forests, hills, mountains, streams, all that stuff is right there for you. This is a lovely spot up in Massachusetts. No, Vermont, sorry, I lie. Vermont. The Goose Pond Cabin is right on this. They call it a pond. It's really like a lake up that way. People call lakes ponds a lot. And this is just one of the tremendous places along the trail where you can camp. There's no shelter here, but there's a cabin. And in the morning during the season, the local trail organization has someone there, and they make pancakes for all the hikers, which is very much appreciated. A little thing called trail magic. And so in this picture, I'll stop now for some questions. I slept in under that red tarp. There's a hammock, and there are other pictures I'll show you where you can see the hammock a little more clearly. And I like this picture because, as you can tell, the ground falls off there to the left of the picture, and that indeed that was a a big cliff, a couple 100 feet down, I think. And it was just one of the most lovely spots I've ever pitched my hammock along the trail. So does anyone have any questions about this whole idea of backpacking on the Appalachian Trail, where you carry everything on your back and you walk along and you got to find your water and find a place to stay? Anyone want to know anything about that?
Ed, this is Ray.
Yeah, Ray.
Very interested in what you did for, like, how many miles a day did you hike, and what you did for, like, recovery wise, in terms of diet or in terms of, whatever? What was your plan for that? Because usually when you hike somewhere the next day, like you're off, you don't, but the Appalachian Trail, you're never off.
Well, the longest I've ever hiked in a series of days, or I should say the longest time I've been just out on the trail, not hiking every day, but was about 21 days, about 3 weeks. I was hiking in the north. I hiked through New York into Connecticut and into Massachusetts, and I was out for about 3 weeks that run. I think I got into Vermont before I packed up and came home. Me personally, I'm quite slow. There are hikers who can hike 20 miles, especially once they've got what they call their trail legs. They get super strong after a month or two on the trail and they can just hike all day. The farthest I've ever hiked in one day with my backpack is about 20 miles, 21 miles. And that was luckily, there's a flat space in between the mountains in Cumberland County, Pennsylvania. You come down from one set of mountains and you come down, you're on the flat and you cross over farmland and then you go up again. And so my farthest personal day was that stretch of mostly flat farmland. I will typically these days in my advanced years, I'll be very happy if I hike a 10-mile day. Also because I'm usually not out consistently week after week. Usually it is like a long weekend or a week. And so while you can practice, you can train, it's very hard to get through hiker strength legs when you're only doing it that way. I like to tell the story of hiking at a place called the roller coaster in Northern Virginia. And the roller coaster is a series of up and downs, up and downs, up and downs. There's even a sign that says, "Caution, you're entering the roller coaster." And years ago, I'm struggling up, sweat pouring off me, and these three through hikers, people who have hiked all the way from Georgia, they blow by me. They're walking twice as fast as I am uphill. And to rub salt in the wound, they're having an animated conversation at the same time. So, it really depends on your training, your conditioning, and how long you're hiking one day after the next about exactly how far you can go. Like I said, these days I'm thrilled to go 10 miles. And every X number of days, you got to take a break.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anyone else have any queries?
What's the difference between camping and hiking?
Well, depending on, if you can go camping in your car and just jump out and pitch a tent. So that's the camping part. You can say when you're backpacking, when you stop for the night, you can say now you're camping. So I guess it just depends on how you want to use the word, John.
Hi, this is Xiangling. What's the elevation? Is there an oxygen issue?
No, not in my experience. The highest point on the trail, they just changed the name. We'll see, maybe someone in Washington is going to want to change it back. But it's not that high. It's a place where people drive up, park in a parking lot, and then they walk up to the highest point on the trail. The Mount Katahdin at the end is 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet or something like that. So oxygen typically is not the deal, is not an issue. Hiking up that elevation is tough. And so but it's not so much, in my experience, it's not like hiking Everest. So you don't need oxygen, you just get tired.
And are the trails free of tree trunks, tree roots, so that you can just walk without kind of looking down all the time?
Oh no, I'm sorry to say that there are some pieces of trail that are lovely, that are groomed. There are some pieces of trail that are just a joy to walk on, and hikers love those sections because once you can get into your groove and you can walk and not worry about where your feet are, that's a good day. But there are lots of miles of trail, like in Pennsylvania, which is known as the Death of Boots. Pennsylvania is also called Rocksylvania, lots of rocks. In the Northeast especially, there are trails where tree roots are very prevalent. And so Sometimes trees are falling over the trail, and sometimes they've been cut by trail maintainers, and sometimes you just climb over them. We had that big hurricane down south, actually has caused a lot of chaos in the southern parts of the trail. Bridges were washed away, miles of trail had thousands of tree trunks blown down on them. There's some big reroutes where the trail has been pointed around, reroutes. So yeah, no, the trail is not always a good footpath in that context. Sometimes it's pretty slow walking.
My last important question, does the cell phone work all the way?
It does not. In my experience, most of the time, if you're at the top of a mountain, you'll get some reception, but that is not 100% of the time either. There are some of those mountains in Georgia where I was 2 years ago, where I was on the top of a nice, tall, little Georgia mountain, and there was zero signal. So sometimes yes, but sometimes no.
Thank
So
you.
Ed, we had a, oh, I apologize. Get another question.
No, I
No,
said
no.
thank you.
Someone wrote something, I think, but I didn't see
In the
it.
chat. Yeah, it said, where does the Appalachian Trail start and where does it end?
Springer Mountain, Georgia, which is northern Georgia. There's a state park there, and there's a little place where people go to enjoy a falls. It's a big set of falls, and the trail itself starts at the top of Springer Mountain. And so there's something called the Approach Trail, which is 7 miles or so, and it's up. It is up, and there is a certain percentage of people who say, I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail, and they go to Springer, and they climb that mountain, and they turn around and say, nope, I'm done. I'm not hiking anymore. And then the next big dropout point for people who decide they want to hike the whole thing is about 30 miles farther, Neal's Gap. I showed you a picture there. I'm going to show a new picture here. There's a mountain for you to look at. It's up in Connecticut somewhere. More questions?
There is another question in the chat, which says, is there a good resource to identify entries to the trail when you want to plan to do it in sections?
Absolutely. I use a piece of software called Far Out. The
Right.
words far and the word out. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the ATC, has a lot of resources online. There are Google Map resources, so people can customize these Google Map overlays that you can download, and you can look at the trail through Google Maps. There are physical maps you can get, but I myself use Far Out, and that's really a useful tool to use. You can also go to places like whiteblaze.net, which is an online community of Appalachian Trail hikers, and there are also Facebook groups that talk about the trail a lot. I would recommend not going to the Facebook and saying, tell me where the trailhead is for such and such, because really you should just look that up yourself. So that's a better picture of the hammock situation I was talking about before. And as far as animals coming up, I'm going to show a picture of some animals in a second.
That was going to be my next question. That was actually my question in the question in chat too. Do you encounter wild animals? And my question was, have you ever, ran into a bear?
I have indeed run into many bears. 10, dozen, 15, 95% of the time when I see a bear, that bear is leaving, because I only saw the bear because the bear didn't know I was there. Some bears have been accustomed to humans, that they might live near where they're trash. And so the bear that I have a picture of here somewhere, not the salamander. Salamanders are often along the trail. The one bear that I saw, not this deer, there's 2 deer there actually. But that bear right there, I met at Skyland Resort. I'm sure the bear was saying, I'm here for the trash. And every other bear I've ever met on the trail has skedaddled. Now, whenever you see a bear running away from you, what I do is I look behind me, because if there's a baby bear behind me and there's a mommy bear ahead of me, I'm in the wrong place. And that's really the only time I would worry about seeing a bear on the East Coast of the United States is if you were in between a mommy bear and cubs. Right. So
Right.
the bears typically do not want to be around you. The exception to that is this bear. He liked the trash at the Skyline Resort, which is in the Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. And yes, these are black bears on the East Coast. I'm not talking about grizzlies. I'm not talking about brown bears out west. I'm talking about these little guys right here. And they're little. They're little. They're little. They're not really that small, but compared to like a grizzly, they're relatively small bears, and they're very shy. And unless they get used to human food, they're not dangerous at all. When they get dangerous, then they start to bother people for their food because people leave their food around, and then someone has to come take care of them, and that's not a good thing for the bear. So I saw a couple of questions flash by. I'll tell you about this donkey in a minute. Yes, I've seen many snakes. The most poisonous snake I ever met, though, was on the Delaware-Raritan Canal Path near Trenton. There was a copperhead snake on the canal path, and that is by far the most dangerous snake I've ever been close to. There are a lot of snakes, but have care, keep your eyes open. You know, a lot of mountains you'll go on the Appalachian Trail, Rattlesnake Mountain, you know, so you're pretty careful. Snake bites are pretty rare on the trail. So in New Jersey, there's a shelter that's called the Secret Shelter. It's not an official shelter. It now appears in guides like Far Out has it and other places now. No, but back 15 years ago, it was literally a secret shelter. There's a guy who owns some land up in North Jersey that's off the trail. And if you knew where to turn left off the trail, you would end up on his little piece of land. He had for water, he had a well you could use. He had some little buildings that you could get out of the weather in, and trees and campground place. And so he also has this donkey who would come out on the trail. And so I was shocked one day when I was hiking up in Jersey, and I met this donkey on the trail, and he turned around and led me to the secret shelter. So that's, I forget this guy's name, Max or Bob or something. He's got an official name, but I forget what it was. There's another setup, a different tarp, not the red one you've seen. That's at a high point in Pennsylvania, where you're not officially supposed to camp, but I camped anyway. So I think I saw some questions fly by and I didn't quite catch them.
One of them is from Jill. It says, what are your plans to hike the rest of the trail?
I would like to hike the rest of the trail. I had big plans in 2023. I had a sabbatical. I trained. I was in the best shape of my recent life. And my back kind of went out on me. I did 3 round trips down to Georgia. I managed about 85 miles. I was trying to hike up to the point I'd hiked in Virginia, which would have been a very lot of miles, but I didn't hike as many miles as I'd liked. So I'm not sure now that I'll be able to finish the trail, but I'm going to try. I'll get some miles in this summer, but I'm not going to hurt myself doing it. So I'll be on the trail. I'll probably go on the north side of the trail. I think I'll pick up my hiking in Vermont. If you know Vermont at all, there's a highway called Route 4. That's where I stopped hiking on the north side, and I've hiked from there south all the way south of Waynesboro, Virginia. Plus, I've also hiked the very beginning of the trail in Georgia. So yeah, I will hike more. Speaking of Georgia, this is the plaque at the very beginning of the trail on Springer Mountain. I should say the south end. I say beginning because I always conceptualize the trail as starting in Georgia. And this, of course, is a sticker from our faculty union. And that plaque is right there, and right near there is the first blaze, which I'll see in another picture. This gate is down near in the park. Amicalola Falls is the name of the state park in Georgia. looks like I've got about 5 minutes to go. Any other questions?
Ed, when you were out on the trail, did you ever run into trail angels, people who
Yes.
help you along the way? And what were your experiences with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to flip back real quick, so your screen might be kind of funny. This gentleman right here next to me, because I'm getting senile, I forget his name right off the top of my head, but he and his spouse used to, they're retired now. They used to run a hostel. Really, they ran a bed and breakfast, and they opened it up to hikers. It's just a house, so they don't have a lot of people in at any one time. And when I was hurt in Georgia, these folks helped me out they found a chiropractor that would work with me. I was able to stay with them. They were very generous with their time and let me park my car there. And so yes, trail angels like that. There are other trail angels I've met. I was coming up in Massachusetts, Great Barrington, and I was having a hard time. I had just taken a long rest, and I was just not hiking well, and I had no energy. And that was when I discovered the value of electrolytes, because I really thought up to that point a couple of years ago, electrolytes are just marketing. But there was a trail angel who had Gatorade, and I had some Gatorade, and I felt great for the rest of the day. And it wasn't just the sugar rush. It was really genuinely the rest of the day. And I was like, oh, so I carry electrolyte tablets now when I hike, and they help a lot. So, and there's a guy named Fresh Grounds who lives part-time out of his van. He's a nonprofit. He stops and he makes food, and he's got a washing station so hikers wash up to keep the norovirus away. By the way, norovirus, everyone's heard that in the news lately. Norovirus has been a trail problem for years and years because, hikers often less sanitation. And so to all us hikers, it's unfortunately a little dark amusement that now norovirus is everywhere because it is a scourge. You go to a shelter, you go to a hostel, and you catch it there, and then it's days you're off the trail, feeling terrible.
So
What you're looking at there is the trail map at the Amicalola Lodge. It's a very nice lodging right there at Springer Mountain. It's partway up the mountain towards the top where the trail starts. And so in their lobby, they've got this giant map, and you can tell from the lamp on the lower left, that gives you a sense of the scale of that map.
So as we're winding up here, if anyone has any additional questions, and just keep on going for as long as you like. I could talk about this all day. I love this stuff. So, please ask questions and go from there.
This is me, by the way, at the top of Springer Mountain. There is a trail runner, a park employee who helps hikers, who took my picture for me. And you notice I'm bent over a little bit. That's because my back was already bothering me when I took this picture. So I think that's it. Yep, that's it for my pictures too. So, and you see on the lower right, they see the first blaze. That's the first one at the beginning of Georgia. And then I showed you the blaze at the start of my hike in New Jersey wearing the same outfit. So. Thanks, Susan. I enjoy taking pictures. I keep on reminding myself that the pictures with people in them are going to be more memorable than all the pictures of all the mountains. So,
that's what they say, but I like the mountains too. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for chiming in for my Ed talk. Got time for another question or two, I suppose.
And if someone wanted to start we'll leave it with this. Someone said, hey, I'm really inspired by what we looked at today, and I want to start hiking maybe the New Jersey portion of the Appalachian Trail. How would you recommend them start doing that?
From scratch, that's a long answer. The easiest way to start, I say, would be to go to YouTube and look for people who video blog their hikes. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't a video blog per se, but there's a blogger who went by the name of Loner. He was a hammock camper. And so I viewed a lot of his stuff. There's a hiker named 5 Million Steps with Yoda who blogged her hikes. And so those are my early exposure to long distance backpacking. And that's a way to look and see how people do it, what gear they use. There's a million years of talking about gear and shoes. And so you can do this forever. But if you're just getting started, that's a place to start. Also, if you're somebody on this call wants to talk one-on-one about hiking the trail, I'm happy to meet up for a hot chocolate or something. We can talk about it.
Ed, thank you so much for doing the tidbit today. It was a lot of fun. I absolutely love this topic, and hopefully you'll be back again with more adventures soon. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks,
And
Ed.
thank you everyone for logging on. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.